Ladies and gentlemen, please now welcome to the stage our first keynote speaker this morning, Mr. Harry Brekelmans, Project and Technology Director, Royal Dutch Shell.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real privilege to be back here again. I was last year in 2016. And I'm sure you'll remember from then that I showed you this next slide, which was particularly relevant at the time because we were just about to complete the transaction around BG Group. And today, equally, it is very relevant because we are in the run-up to our quarterly results. Now, 2016, it's obviously only 2 years ago. And as you well remember, I, at the time, outlined the need for a renaissance in our industry. 2 years ago, of course, you're all thinking now, well, the renaissance in itself, of course, took decades, it took centuries to unfold. It's the magnificent Duomo here in Florence, which stands so firmly in the history of the Renaissance and so proudly in Florence's skyline. It took more than 100 years to complete. And what is more, its great dome would not have risen without innovation, without collaboration, and without strong foundations. A real renaissance requires change. It takes time, it takes dedication. It builds on strong foundations, and it requires new ways of working. And we must apply this to our industry. Now, when you glance at the recent results in the industry, you could argue that the rebirth is well underway. But frankly and personally, I think this is just the beginning. As discussed just now by the eminent panel, there are many forces at work today. We are in a time of significant market volatility. We see significant price uncertainty, and we're in the midst of an energy transition, where society is moving towards a lower carbon energy system. And of course, that requires very, very significant change. Yet the world will still need oil and gas for many decades to come. So as an industry, we need to build on our foundations. We have to continue to work together, and we have to change to be ready for the future. Now you must be thinking, it's all great, talking about change, but how do you go about that in practice? Now, in Shell, for any such change, we want to ensure that we remain very consistent with our core business aspirations. And we fundamentally have three aspirations. The first one is that we want to be a world-class investment, of course. The second one is that we want to thrive in the energy transition. And the third, connected one to that, is that we want to earn a strong societal license to operate. Now, how do we go about delivering that then in practice? And we would say that we do that through three focused drives. The first one is around portfolio reshaping. The second one is around capital efficiency. And the third one is around operational excellence. And let me start to speak about the first one, portfolio reshaping. In 2016, we completed the acquisition of the BG Group. And through that bold transaction, we significantly enhanced our position in deep water and in integrated gas. We accompanied that with a $30 billion divestment program between 2016 and the end of this year that encompasses the sale of non-core assets and significant reshaping of our existing portfolio. So while we are continuing to build on the strength of our oil, gas, and chemicals business, we are also laying the foundations for future growth. And we do that through our New Energies business, which was established in 2016. And just to share some proof points with you there, for example, the investment we made in a second-generation biofuels plant in our Horizon JV in Brazil. Or more recently, the acquisition of New Motion, which holds the largest network of electrical vehicle charging points in Europe. Or most recently, the announcement to acquire First Utility, which is a large independent provider of energy services to customers in the UK. Now, hopefully, through those examples, you see our ambition coming through, not only to be a world-class investment, but also to thrive through the energy transition. Now, I mentioned a second and a third focus drive, capital efficiency and operational excellence, which is really about getting more for every dollar spent in our business. And to show you how we're doing that, I will take you to the Gulf of Mexico. And I'll use the example of 4 deep water projects to show you how our own renaissance is taking hold since the oil price drop. The first project I will mention is one-of-a-kind project that was well underway at the end of 2014 when the oil price dropped, and where, of course, we had a limited number of degrees of freedom to impact the project. The last project I will tell you about is where we effectively had a blank piece of paper and had the ability to entirely reconfigure the project. Let me begin with Stones, the first project. As I said, it was well underway in the end of 2014. It is the world's deepest oil and gas project, and it was novel in many ways. But even despite that, we focused significantly on improving the shape of that project through 2 levers. First of all, of course, we caught the tailwind of what was a very much deflationary market at the time, and using our buying power, we were able to exercise that to see much improvement. But we also relentlessly focused on performance improvement in the way that we constructed the facilities in this FPSO, as well as the drilling and well delivery components. And just to give you an example of what that manifested itself in, is that we, looking at the initial wells taking 150 days to drill, today we can get that same job done in 60 days. Let's move now to Appomattox. That project was sanctioned in 2015, and it gave us more freedom to exercise the various levers. At that time already, between concept selection and final sanction, we had been able to take the cost of the project down by about 20% by looking sensibly and competitively at the scoping elements and making use, of course, of the tailwind in the markets. But even after final investment decision, we were still able to effect a 25% improvement in cost. Again, very much by exercising the performance improvements that we are then and had then already seen, particularly in our well delivery, but also in the way we constructed our facilities. And last but not least, by making significant use of replication, very much drawing on the experience we had from the neighboring Olympus platform, tension leg platform, which had been constructed only a few years before that. Let me then move to another project which was Kaikias. It's a subsea tieback. It was sanctioned in 2016, so it was the next one there. And there again, we were able to effect more of these levers. And the one that I would specifically mention here is the way we interacted with our suppliers, our strategic supply chain partners, who we involved very early in the process. And we're then able to translate that into appropriate choices around where we used market solutions, where we used replication, and where we decided to co-innovate. And if you then add that to the operational performance improvements, again in drilling and construction, and the tailwind in the market, then that in its own right translated into a 50% reduction of cost vis-à-vis the initial estimates. Now, the final project that I'll refer to is one where we still have yet to make the final investment decision. It was the one where in 2015 we said to the team, take everything you have off the table and redesign this one from scratch. This is about the Vito project, which is a potential new hub in the Gulf of Mexico. And there we really saw how each and every one of the levers I mentioned, in terms of competitive scoping, in terms of effective execution, in terms of applying selective innovation and replication, and working in unison with our market suppliers and partners, amounting or delivering in aggregate something like a 70% reduction of cost vis-à-vis the initial estimates. Now, of course, whilst it is essential that we continue to improve the capital efficiency of all our investments to be truly competitive, we also need to drive our third focus area, operational excellence. And of course, this is not new to you. It means increasing safety, improving reliability, productivity, and efficiency in maintenance, in logistics, in production operations, in essentially everything we do. And just to share with you what that did to us or did for us in the Gulf of Mexico. It led significantly to a challenge to our prevailing operating conditions, really driving our mindset around how we went about the sparing and the redundancy that over time had accumulated in our supply chains and our activities, and taking that down to an absolute minimum level. It was working closely with our suppliers to drive down logistics costs and activity. And just a couple of examples, it allowed us to reduce rig rates per day by 50%. It allowed us to challenge marine transport and the number of contracted marine vessels by 75%. Now, of course, I could not speak here today and not mention digitalization. And we see it as one of the key drivers to improve capital efficiency, of course, as well as operational excellence. We, like many of you now, have sensors that work in the deepest waters. We have drones that monitor our most remote oil and gas operations. And we gather huge volumes of data that are real-time analyzed to provide new insights and interventions that we make. And to give you an idea of how that impacts the front line, I'm going to show you a short clip from one of our downstream manufacturing sites. Now, the possibilities that technology brings are becoming ever more apparent, and the use of it is becoming ever more pervasive. From either the wearable technology that you see our teams using on site, to the insights that we are gathering through AI and the analysis of the huge data volumes that then lead to interventions in our business that improve operational efficiency and capital efficiency. Now, not all of that has to be cutting edge or one of a kind, as you know. This is a smart combination between off-the-shelf available technologies. It's a mix between in-house development and leveraging the external ecosystem. It is looking at our own industry as well as leveraging other industries. One good example is the system that we adopted called Veros. It's a system for monitoring electrical motors. And it picks up subtle fluctuations in the power consumption of the motors. And that then signals mechanical failure well in advance of it actually happening. The other advantage the technology has is that you can install the sensors on the power cables. So it doesn't obviously have to be at the source, the motor that sometimes can be at 10,000 feet deep. And the combination of that allows us to signal months in advance when mechanical failure will occur. And then, of course, to proactively intervene. We estimate that simply rolling this out across our operations will amount to an improvement of $300 million of additional production that would otherwise have been lost due to unplanned downtime. So I'll repeat, 3 approaches: portfolio reshaping, capital efficiency, operational excellence. We apply these across all our projects and all our assets. And they are obviously crucial to our ambition of being a world-class investment case. In the UK alone, applying these approaches have allowed us to improve production efficiency by 25% and reduce unit operating costs by 70%. And of course, I know this is evident to you, but I want to restate the obvious. None of this is possible without drawing on the ecosystem of strategic suppliers and partners that we have. And we need to continue to drive to transform that ecosystem. We need to drive for more harmonization of standards, of practices, of designs, and at the same time, we need to co-innovate. Now, all these improvements are essential if we want to continue supplying affordable energy and products from oil and gas for decades to come. But it's not good enough just to be a world-class investment case. As I mentioned before, we in Shell also want to thrive through the energy transition, and we want to earn a strong societal license to operate. And I think the progress we're making there, I think, can be seen very clearly in a statement we recently made around greenhouse gas emissions. We announced an ambition to reduce our net carbon footprint, not only of our operations, but also of our customers' emissions as a result of the use of our energy products. And we will do that in step with society's progress towards the achievement and delivery of the Paris goals. In practice, for us, that means we will have to reduce that net carbon footprint by 50% by 2050 and by 20% by 2035. And this aim will drive the transformation in our portfolio through the medium and the long term, because it will move our portfolio mix towards products with a lower carbon footprint. Whether we do that by growing our integrated gas business, or whether we do it by increasing our sales of biofuels, or by increasing our share of renewable power generation. And by reviewing it every 5 years, we will ensure that we stay in step with society. And I don't need to tell you that that will lead to significant change. But then any renaissance is a time of change. And as I've outlined to you today, Shell is changing, and I know you know that the industry is changing. But this is just the beginning. We as leaders in the industry must all continue to drive change. And through it all, we must work ever more closely together, learn from each other, and make ourselves fit for the future. Leonardo da Vinci, who was the master of the Renaissance, as you know, is often quoted as saying, "Being willing is not enough, we must do." We have realized much together already and achieved much together, but there is much, much more we need to do together if our industry renaissance is to stand the test of time. And I look forward to that. Thank you very much, and have a great day.